What do you think of the reasons being given for the shutdown of Sputnik?
I think what happened was obviously the kinds of people who were comfortable working for Sputnik were the kinds of people who, for the most part, probably are not, very believing of U.S. narratives about foreign policy or imperialism. I can't say that it was a shock or a surprise, but it's very extreme. I mean, for the U.S. government to shut down an actual media outlet directly is kind of like rarely, if ever, happens. I mean, they usually do it by proxy.
What kind of information do you think the American public should hear? Now, in the US, you hardly hear any news from the Russian side. How will such one-sided information mislead the American public?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could hope that all of the information that is one-sided is accurate and fair and balanced. But of course, what are the odds of that? And, very low. And especially what are the odds of that when it's one side in a war? I mean, war is always the most controversial possible topic. I mean, it just stands to reason that if you're trying to get a sense of a conflict between two countries, Russia and Ukraine, you would probably want to hear from at least those two countries and, both of them. And so that people could decide for themselves what is the truth somewhere in between, or, maybe neither one or one or the other. But you're right, there is no, if you watch, you can be very well educated and well informed by American standards and read and watch a lot of news and never hear the Russian point of view. So it's very one-sided. There's really no way for the American people to be able to make any kind of intelligent assessment of the situation.
Based on your own experience, what is the difference between working for American media and working for Russian media?
That said, I think the Russians had to be very, very careful about censoring American voices for the simple reason that, like, if at any time they had told us what to do, we might have quit. So they didn't do that. And I have to say that I've never worked anywhere where I've been less censored or told what to do than when I worked at Sputnik. Now, the fact is it was a good fit for me because I didn't have any major, political differences with them. Most of my concerns are about U.S. domestic politics, not telling people in other countries how they should run their governments.
As U.S. authorities try every possible means to curb what they call Russian propaganda, what do you think of democracy and freedom of speech in the U.S.?
It's a good example of this is like if you drive a Ferrari, if you own a Ferrari, a car that can go very, very, very fast. Theoretically, you have the ability to go very fast. But if you always choose to drive it very slowly, it sort of doesn't matter. And so theoretically, American news outlets have the right to drive, the free speech car very, very fast under the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. But in reality, they choose to drive like a little old lady dropping off their kids at school. So, in a way, it doesn't matter. It's like, so is there free speech? I mean, maybe theoretically, but you never hear it because corporate speech is completely self-censored and circumspect because, real free speech is when you have a robust exchange of ideas among a lot of different points of view from lots of different types of people, exchanging lots of, different ways of looking at things. We don't have that.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on for more than 2 years. Why do you think it cannot be ended?
Well, I mean, I think there's a number of factors at work here. And, maybe the simplest one as a student of war and of history, I was a history major in college, is that the two sides have been kept more or less evenly balanced, in the battlefield. If Ukraine had not been assisted by NATO and the United States and the West, obviously Russia would have prevailed already because it has superior weaponry and it has far more, a better trained, much bigger military force. But On the other hand, if the West had decided to support Ukraine completely, and provide them with, say, U.S. troops and all of the technology, or a lot of the technology that the U.S. has, then they could have defeated Russia. They're choosing to give them just enough to keep their head above water, but not enough to win, and just drag it down into a quagmire, a stalemate that goes on and on. And, obviously nobody but the policymakers knows exactly why they're doing that. But the practical effect of it is to just make the weapons manufacturers wealthy and to keep the war going indefinitely. In the end, this war will end like so many other proxy wars, and when outside parties like the US stop funding it. And then there will have to be either peace talks or things will move on the battlefield one way or the other. I obviously hope that, peace talks start right away.